I still remember that night like a bruise I can't rub away. I had just finished a late client meeting, exhausted, but relieved that Mom had agreed almost surprisingly to keep an eye on my boys until I got there. Pulling into the driveway, I could already hear the muffled sounds of laughter inside. For a moment, I thought everything was fine. I thought maybe, finally, my parents were enjoying time with Jamie and Tyler, treating them the way grandparents should. Before we dive into true revenge stories, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Hearing from people around the world makes these stories even more powerful and reminds us how connected we all are. But when I stepped into the kitchen, the entire scene sliced me open. At the dining table, my sister Jessica's twins, Madison and Connor, sat with shiny plates of spaghetti stacked high. Steam curled up from their bowls, garlic bread glistening with butter on the side. Their tall glasses of milk clinked as they reached for seconds, giggling between bites. Dad was in his recliner, balancing his own heaping plate eyes on the TV like this was any ordinary evening. And then my gaze fell to the corner. There, on the cold tile floor near the doorway, sat my children. My Jamie, 8 years old, trying so hard to hide his hunger behind a polite smile. My Tyler, 6, holding half a peanut butter sandwich with both hands, chewing slowly like stretching each bite would somehow fill him. No plates, no chairs, just my sons cross-legged on the ground eating scraps while their cousins feasted 10 feet away. "Mom," I said, my voice sharp before I could soften it. "What's going on here?" She barely looked up, sliding Madison's empty plate into the sink. "Oh, you're here early. We were just finishing dinner." "Dinner?" I glanced at the pot still sitting on the stove, half full of spaghetti. There was more than enough for everyone. Jessica didn't even glance up from her phone. "They're fine. Kids don't need much." "Kids," I repeated, staring at my boys, who now looked down at their hands as though ashamed to be hungry. Not Jamie and Tyler, just generic kids. I crouched next to them. "Sweethearts did. Grandma not make you dinner." "We had sandwiches," Tyler said matter-of-factly. "Grandma said there wasn't enough spaghetti for everyone." Jamie's voice was quieter, like he already knew the script. "It's okay, Mom. We're not that hungry." But I knew my son. Jamie never turned down a real meal unless he was made to feel like he didn't deserve it. I felt something inside me split: grief, anger, disbelief, all tangled together. My children, my flesh and blood, treated like they were second class in the very house I had grown up in. And then Jessica looked at me with that casual smirk I'd grown to despise. "They should get used to it, Susan. Not everyone gets the same. That's just how life works." My father nodded without even looking away from the television. "They need to learn their place." Their place. My heart pounded so loud it drowned out every other sound in the room. I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to shake them until they understood what they were doing. But I just stood there, frozen in the doorway, taking in every detail: my children swallowing humiliation with dry sandwiches, my parents complicit, my sister smug. That was the moment I realized something fundamental had shifted. For years I had defended them. For years I told Marcus they just showed love differently, that family was complicated, that maybe he was misreading their awkwardness around our interracial marriage. But here it was plain and undeniable. My family didn't just fail to love my children, they were teaching them they deserved less. I helped Jamie and Tyler to their feet, brushed crumbs from their shirts, and guided them toward the door. My hands shook as I gathered their backpacks. "We're leaving," I said flatly. "Don't overreact," Mom called after me, her voice dripping with practiced guilt. "Children don't need full meals every time. They said they weren't hungry." I turned back just once, meeting her eyes. "They're children, Mom. They're not supposed to beg for equal treatment in their own grandparents' house." The room fell silent, but not the kind of silence that comes with reflection. It was the heavy silence of people who think they've done nothing wrong. As we walked out into the night air, Tyler tugged at my sleeve. "Mommy," he whispered, "why do Madison and Connor get more food than us?" "Is it because we look different?" My throat tightened so hard I could barely breathe. At 6 years old, my son was already asking questions no child should ever have to ask. I strapped them into the car, forcing a steady smile onto my face, though my insides burned. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "it's not you. It's them." And one day, they're going to see just how wrong they were. I didn't know then how far things would spiral or how much my decision that night would cost my family. But I did know one thing, that the dinner where my kids were told to eat crumbs, was the last time I would ever let them be treated as less than. Because if blood couldn't protect them, I would. If you're still watching, comment 1 so I know you're still with me. Driving home that night, the streetlights blurred into streaks of gold against the windshield. Jamie and Tyler were silent in the back seat, their small faces turned toward the dark window glass. Normally, the ride home from my parents' house was full of chatter about games they'd played or desserts Grandma had made. But tonight, there was only silence, heavy, wounded silence that I didn't know how to fill. By the time we pulled into our driveway, my stomach felt knotted with both rage and guilt. Rage at what I had just witnessed. Guilt for all the years I had defended their behavior, pretending my children weren't being treated differently when deep down I knew. As Marcus helped the boys inside and tucked them into bed, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the numbers on my laptop screen. Transfers, checks, loan repayments that were never repaid. 8 years' worth of transactions scrolled before me like a confession I'd been too blind to read. It had started innocently. At 17, fresh from my first real job, Mom had asked me to help with groceries when times were tight. $20 here, $50 there. Back then I felt proud, even useful. Helping family was what you did right. But as my salary grew, so did their emergencies. A car repair for Jessica, dental work for Dad, a leaking roof that just happened to cost exactly the size of my annual bonus. Each request wrapped in just enough guilt to make refusal impossible. Your father hates asking for help, Susan, but the dentist said he needs this done. Jessica's car broke down and she really can't afford to lose her job. Sweetheart, the winter storms will ruin the roof if we don't fix it now. I paid them all, every single time. What I didn't notice, what Marcus tried gently to point out, was that the pattern wasn't random. It was systematic. I wasn't helping in a crisis. I was funding their lifestyle. And in return, when we moved apartments, they were too busy to lend a hand. When I had surgery and needed someone to watch the boys, Jessica couldn't take time off. When Marcus and I asked for one simple anniversary babysitting night, everyone suddenly had other plans. But when it came to money, the phone always rang, and I always answered. Sitting there that night looking at the totals, I felt a new kind of betrayal, not just of my children, but of myself. Over the last 3 years alone, I had sent nearly $50,000. That was college tuition. That was a down payment on a house. That was security for my own family, the one I had chosen to build, being siphoned away for a family that couldn't even feed my kids a proper dinner. Marcus came back into the kitchen, his face shadowed but steady. "They asleep?" I asked. He nodded. "Out like lights." "But Susan, what happened tonight?" I told him everything. The spaghetti, the sandwiches, the words they need to learn their place. Marcus sat quietly at first, listening, his jaw tightening with every detail. When I reached the part about Tyler asking if it was because they looked different, his hands clenched into fists. "I've suspected for years," he said finally, voice low. "The way your mom looked at me, the way your dad questioned if I could provide, Jessica's comments about the boys fitting in. I hoped I was wrong, but tonight proves it." I dropped my head into my hands. And I defended them. I made excuses. I thought if I just kept helping, kept showing up, they'd learn to love us all equally. Marcus reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Babe love doesn't have to be bought. And if it does, it isn't love." His words landed like a stone in my chest. For years I had been paying not just for their bills, but for the illusion that we were one big supportive family. And tonight, the illusion shattered. Looking at the columns of money I'd poured into their lives, I realized something painful but liberating. Every dollar had been buying silence. My silence. Silence about their prejudice, their favoritism, their treatment of my children. But no more. That night I closed my laptop and made a quiet promise to myself. If my family wanted to keep testing whether I'd always come back with my checkbook, they were about to learn the cost of underestimating me, because loyalty works both ways. And if they couldn't show it to my children, they had lost the right to expect it from me. 2 days passed after that spaghetti night, but the anger inside me didn't cool. It calcified. On the outside, I kept up appearances, going to work, packing lunches, smiling at clients. But under the surface, I was unraveling. Every time I looked at my boys, I replayed the image of them sitting on the kitchen floor with their half sandwiches while their cousins ate like royalty. My phone rang that Thursday afternoon. It was Mom. Her voice carried that carefully practiced warmth she used whenever she wanted something. "Susan, honey, about the other night. Maybe things got misinterpreted. We'd love for you to come by tomorrow, clear the air. Jessica will be here too. Normally, I would have sighed in relief, taken the invitation at face value, and gone over with an apology tucked under my tongue. That was the rhythm of our family. They hurt me. I apologized for reacting. But not this time. This time, I wanted the truth. So I told her what she wanted to hear. You're right, Mom. I probably overreacted. I'll stop by." Friday came. Instead of pulling into the driveway, I parked 2 blocks away. I slipped through the back door using the spare key they still didn't know I had, and I moved quietly down the hall toward the kitchen. Their voices floated through the air, familiar, casual, and cruel. "I can't believe she made such a big drama about dinner," Jessica scoffed, "acting like we're monsters because we gave her kids sandwiches. They need to understand how the world works." Dad replied, his tone calm, as if lecturing a student. "Better to learn young than get their hopes up." "Exactly," Mom chimed in. "Susan's always been idealistic. She thinks love conquers everything, but that's not realistic with mixed children." My heart lurched. Mixed children. My children. Reduced to a category instead of names. Jessica's voice dropped lower, but I still heard it. "Honestly, I can't have Madison and Connor's friends asking why Jamie and Tyler look nothing like the rest of us. It's awkward." "Oh, the neighbors already whisper," Mom added. "They wonder if Susan really knew what she was getting into. People say mixed kids struggle with identity with behavior." I gripped the wall to steady myself. They weren't just excluding my boys from dinner, they were dissecting their very existence. Then came the sentence that seared itself into my memory forever. Mom's voice casual, as if she were commenting on the weather. "The siblings' children eat first. Susan's kids can wait for the crumbs. That's just how it is with mixed families. The normal-looking children get priority." Jessica laughed. "The sooner Jamie and Tyler get used to it, the better." Dad added the final nail. "They were born to get leftovers. We're doing them a favor by teaching them early." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My ears rang, my vision blurred. I wanted to burst into the kitchen screaming, but I forced myself to stay frozen, memorizing every word. Because this was no longer about denial or excuses. This was their truth stripped bare when they thought I wasn't listening. And in that hallway, the last piece of the daughter they had shaped, obedient, generous, endlessly forgiving, died. In her place, someone harder was born. I straightened, wiped the tears from my cheeks, and walked into the kitchen. The conversation stopped mid-sentence. 3 guilty faces snapped toward me. "Susan, Mom," exclaimed, tone instantly switching to bright, sugary surprise. "You're early. I was just telling Jessica how much we enjoyed having the boys the other night." I stared at her, at all of them, with a calm I didn't recognize in myself. "Were you?" "Yes," she said too quickly. "They're such good boys, so well-behaved and polite." I let the silence stretch before I answered. "Funny," I said slowly, "because what I just heard was you calling them mixed kids who should get used to eating scraps. I heard you laughing about how they were born to get leftovers. I heard you call my children less than their cousins." No one spoke. For once, they had no excuse ready. I set Tyler's forgotten water bottle on the counter, my hand steady despite the storm inside me. "I came to pick this up," I said evenly. "And I came to hear the truth. Now I have it." As I turned toward the door, Mom reached out, her voice trembling. "Susan, you don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly." I cut in, my voice sharper than I'd ever let it be. "And from this moment on, you will never again mistake my silence for acceptance." I walked out without another word, each step echoing like a gavel. Because the verdict was clear, my children would never again beg for a place at their table. When I got home that evening, the boys were sprawled on the living room rug, sketching superheroes in bright markers. Their laughter floated through the house like sunlight, washing away some of the darkness I'd just carried. But I knew it wouldn't last if I didn't act. Marcus looked up from the kitchen table, mug of coffee in hand. The moment his eyes met mine, his expression shifted concern, then quiet fury. What happened? I lowered myself into the chair opposite him. I heard them, Marcus. Everything. They weren't just careless with words this time. They said it outright. His jaw tightened. What did they say? I swallowed, forcing myself to repeat it. Mom said Madison and Connor, their children, eat first. That Jamie and Tyler, our boys, should get used to the scraps. Jessica laughed and agreed. Dad said they were born to get leftovers, that it was better to teach them early. Marcus set his mug down so hard the ceramic clinked against wood. For a long moment he said nothing, just rubbed a hand across his forehead as if trying to erase the words. So it's not just in our heads, he said finally. They really believe that. Yes. My voice cracked, but I held his gaze. And not only that, they talked about me too, about how I'll always come back with my checkbook, how I'm their safety net. Something in Marcus's shoulders shifted anger, yes, but also a kind of grim relief. At least now you see it. You've given them nearly a decade of your income, mortgage help, car repairs, medical bills. And for what? So they could starve our boys of dignity while feeding themselves with your hard work. I pressed my palms together, whispering, I don't even know how much it adds up to. Marcus reached across the table, gripping my hands. Then let's find out. And once we do, we cut them off. Completely. No more transfers, no more co-signing loans, no more monthly lifelines. We have to choose our real family, Susan. That's you, me, and the boys. The fierceness in his voice startled me, but it also steadied me. For years, I'd excused their behavior under the banner of loyalty, of cultural differences, of family obligation. But Marcus was right. Obligation had become exploitation. I don't want our children to grow up thinking they deserve crumbs, I said, tears stinging my eyes. And I don't want to teach them that love is something you buy. Exactly, Marcus said. They need to see us setting boundaries. They need to know we'll protect them even if it means walking away from people who share our blood. For the first time in years, I felt my spine straighten under the weight of a new resolve. Then it's done, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. The safety net is gone. They'll learn what life looks like without my money, and maybe, just maybe, they'll finally see what they've lost. Marcus gave a slow, approving nod. It won't be easy. They'll fight, they'll guilt trip, they'll try to twist it back on you. But when that happens, just remember tonight. Remember what you heard. I closed my eyes briefly, and the words replayed in my head, born to get leftovers. The phrase that would fuel my determination for years to come. Opening them again, I looked at my husband. Tomorrow I start pulling the numbers. Every transfer, every bill I covered, every so-called loan. And then we shut it all down. Marcus leaned back, his expression softening. Good. And Susan, yes. He squeezed my hand gently. You're not just protecting our money. You're protecting our son's worth. That's worth more than any check you've ever written. From the living room, Jamie called Mom. Look, I drew a superhero that eats villains' lies, Tyler chimed in. Yeah, and he makes everyone tell the truth. Marcus and I shared a look, half heartbreak, half pride. Our boys already understood more about justice than the adults who should have been their protectors. That night, after tucking them into bed, I stood by their doorway watching them sleep. My children, my responsibility, my reason. And in that moment, I promised them silently, never again would they sit on the floor waiting for scraps. Not while I had breath in my body. The next morning, I brewed a pot of coffee strong enough to wake the dead and spread a stack of bank statements across the kitchen table. 8 years of transactions, each one a tiny incision in my family's savings. I'd never examined them all at once, always convincing myself that each transfer was temporary, a one-time emergency. But lined up in neat columns, the pattern became undeniable. I started highlighting. $1,000 for Dad's dental work. $2,000 for Jessica's car repair. $5,000 for the roof. $7,500 for unexpected medical costs. The list went on. Some amounts small enough to forget by the next paycheck, others so large they had derailed vacations, delayed projects, even drained savings meant for the boys' college funds. By the time Marcus joined me with his second cup of coffee, the table looked like a battlefield, yellow streaks covering nearly every page. He raised an eyebrow. "How bad is it?" I pressed my pen against the final column, heart thudding. 8 years, over $127,000. Marcus whistled low. "That's not just help. That's a second income. You've basically been their provider." I sank back in my chair, staring at the ceiling as the number echoed in my head. $127,000. That was a down payment on a house, 2 college funds, a cushion that could have freed us from sleepless nights about money. And instead it had become the invisible bloodstream of my parents' and Jessica's lifestyle. "They didn't just use me," I whispered. "They built their lives around my paycheck. Mortgage, car bills, all balanced on the assumption that I'd always be there to catch them." Marcus leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "And when you stop, the whole thing collapses." His words settled like iron in my chest. For years, I'd told myself I was keeping the family afloat. But in truth, I was enabling them, teaching them to lean harder while I carried the weight. And the cruelest irony, the same people eating from my hand were teaching my children to accept crumbs. I opened a fresh page in my notebook and began a new list. Action plan. Cancel automatic transfers. Remove my name from any co-signed loans. Speak with the mortgage company. Meet with an accountant to confirm obligations. The pen felt heavy but steady in my grip. Each line I wrote wasn't just financial planning, it was reclaiming control. At one point, Jamie wandered into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Mom, why are there so many papers?" I pulled him close and kissed the top of his head. "I'm just making sure our family is safe, sweetheart." He studied the highlighter marks, then looked up at me. "Safe? Like making sure we don't have to sit on the floor again?" The lump in my throat nearly choked me. "Exactly like that," I said, hugging him tighter. When he padded back to his room, Marcus touched my shoulder. "See? They already understand more than they should. You're not just balancing accounts, you're teaching them what respect looks like." Hours passed. By noon, I had a binder full of evidence dates, amounts, copies of transfers, even text messages where repayment was promised but never delivered. Seeing it in black and white stripped away the last shred of guilt I'd been carrying. They hadn't just leaned on me in hard times. They'd exploited me, systematically weaponizing guilt and love until I could no longer tell the difference. I closed the binder with a decisive snap. "It ends now," I said aloud, not just to Marcus, but to the empty air, to every ghost of obligation that had whispered in my ear for years. Marcus nodded, pride shining in his eyes. "Then let's make the calls. Today." For the first time in years, I felt lighter. Not because the debt had vanished, but because I was no longer pretending it didn't exist. The numbers didn't lie, and neither would I, not to myself, not to my children. This was the beginning of a new chapter, one where my boys would never again be told to wait for scraps. Saturday morning sunlight poured through the kitchen windows, but my mood was steel gray. The binder of financial evidence sat in front of me like a weapon, pages of proof that my so-called family had built their comfort on my back. Today I wasn't just Susan the daughter or Susan the sister, I was Susan the protector. I dialed the first number, the mortgage company. My name was on my parents' loan, something I'd agreed to years ago, with the promise it was temporary. The representative's voice was chipper, professional. "How can I help you today? I need to remove myself as co-borrower," I said firmly. There was a pause, then a practiced explanation that requires refinancing. Your parents would need to qualify on their own income. If not, they'll need to sell the property or find another co-signer. How long does refinancing take? 60 to 90 days. Perfect. Just long enough for them to realize the gravity of their situation. "Start the process," I said. "Send me the paperwork." When I hung up, Marcus gave me a quiet nod of approval. One cord cut. Next, I called Jessica's auto lender. My stomach tightened, remembering how she'd begged me to co-sign, swearing it was just for 6 months until she got a raise. That was 3 years ago. "I want a restriction added," I told the representative. "No refinancing, no additional credit, nothing without my explicit written consent. Understood, ma'am. We'll note that on the account." Another cord severed. Then came the hardest call, my lawyer. A colleague had recommended him sharp pragmatic with little patience for drama. After reviewing my binder, he didn't mince words. You've been subsidizing them at a level that could classify as dependency, but legally, you owe them nothing. Every transfer was voluntary. If you want to pursue repayment on loans, you could, though proving intent might be messy. I exhaled slowly. I don't want repayment. I want freedom. I want to make sure they can never tie me back into their debts again. Then my advice, he said crisply, is immediate cessation of support. Cancel all automatic transfers, notify them in writing, and keep records of every communication. Expect pushback. Desperate people rarely go quietly. Desperate. That word lingered. I pictured my parents staring at an unpaid mortgage bill, Jessica watching her car teeter on repossession. For years I had been their safety net. Now I was pulling it away. By the afternoon, every account transfer was canceled. No more monthly mortgage contributions. No more insurance top-ups. No more emergency deposits disguised as gifts. When the last confirmation email pinged in my inbox, I leaned back in my chair. The silence that followed was startling. For the first time in years, my money belonged to my household. Our household. Marcus slid a mug of tea across the table. How does it feel? I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic, considering. Like I finally stopped bleeding. He smiled faintly. Then brace yourself. They're going to notice. He was right. By evening, my phone buzzed with 3 missed calls from Dad, 2 from Mom and 1 from Jessica. I didn't answer. Not yet. Tonight wasn't about them. Tonight was about reclaiming the ground I'd lost. I tucked the binder onto the top shelf of the bookcase, my shield, my proof, and joined the boys in the living room. Tyler curled against me. Jamie showed off his latest drawing, and Marcus squeezed my hand in quiet solidarity. For the first time in years, I felt the fragile beginnings of peace. And in that peace, a vow crystallized when the storm of their desperation came, and it would come, I would not bend. The line had been drawn, and this time I was ready to defend it. The storm arrived faster than I expected. By Sunday morning, my phone buzzed so violently it slid across the kitchen counter. 10 missed calls from Dad, 8 from Mom, 5 from Jessica. Each voicemail carried a different tone, panic, anger, pleading, but all were threaded with the same realization their safety net was gone. I let them pile up, sipping coffee with Marcus while the boys built Lego towers in the living room. But by noon, the pounding on our front door shook the house. "Don't answer," Marcus murmured. But I did, because hiding was what the old me would have done, and she was gone. Dad stood on the porch, face flushed, Mom right behind him, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Jessica trailed them, arms crossed, fury painted across her features. "Sweetheart." Dad began, his voice carefully measured. "There's been some sort of banking error. Our mortgage payment didn't go through." "No error," I said flatly. "I canceled it." The color drained from Mom's face. "Why would you do that? You know we count on that help." "That's the problem," I cut in. "You've counted on it for 8 years. It's over." Jessica stepped forward, her voice sharp. "So you're just going to let them drown? After everything they've done for you?" I laughed bitterly. "Everything they've done for me. You mean feeding my kids peanut butter while yours ate seconds of spaghetti, teaching them they were born to get leftovers? That's your definition of family." Dad's jaw tightened. "You're twisting words. We were preparing them for reality." "Reality," I snapped. "The reality that their own grandparents see them as less because of their skin, that their aunt would rather protect her kids from awkward questions than stand up for her nephews. That's not reality. That's prejudice." Mom's tears spilled over. "We didn't mean it like that." "Yes, you did," I said, my voice shaking but steady. "I heard every word. And even if you could excuse it, which you can't, the money stops because I will not bankroll people who devalue my children." Jessica's eyes narrowed. "This is about Marcus, isn't it? He's turning you against us." Marcus stepped into the doorway, calm but firm. "Don't you dare pin this on me. Susan finally sees the truth. This is her decision." For a moment, the 4 of them stared at each other, the family I was born into and the family I chose. The silence was thick, broken only by Tyler's laughter from inside, innocent and unknowing. Dad broke first, his voice rising. "Do you realize what you're doing? Without your help, we could lose the house." "Then maybe you should live within your means," I shot back. "Like every other adult. My responsibility is to the 2 little boys inside this house, not to grown adults who refuse to stand on their own feet." Jessica threw up her hands. "Unbelievable. All because your precious children didn't get spaghetti." The rage I'd been holding back finally broke free. Not spaghetti, Jessica. Respect, inclusion, love. "And if you can't give them that, then you get nothing from me." Mom reached out, her voice cracking. "Susan, please." I stepped back, shaking my head. "Go home. Figure out how to live without me. When you're ready to treat Jamie and Tyler like real family, not like burdens, you know where to find us. Until then, don't call. Don't come by. We're done." I closed the door on their stunned faces, heart pounding. Behind me, Marcus wrapped his arms around my shoulders, grounding me. "You did it," he whispered. I exhaled, trembling, but certain. "No," I said. "We did it. And now they'll finally see what life looks like without me holding them up." Inside, my boys' Lego tower toppled with a crash, and their giggles filled the air. For the first time, it sounded like freedom. 2 weeks passed before the first cracks turned into chasms. At first, the calls were angry, Dad demanding explanations, Jessica spitting venom, Mom crying about betrayal. But as the days ticked by and bills came due, their tone shifted. Desperation has a way of stripping pride. On a Thursday evening, the phone rang again. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. Mom's voice came through shaky and thin. "Susan, the bank called. They said if we don't refinance in 60 days, we'll lose the house." I closed my eyes. I had braced for this. "Then you'll need to downsize. Rent something within your budget." "We can't," she cried. "This house, it's where you grew up, where the boys come to visit. You can't just let it go." I thought of Jamie and Tyler eating sandwiches on the kitchen floor while their cousins feasted at the dining table. "It stopped being home the day you told my children they were born to get leftovers." Her sobs filled the silence before she whispered, "We were wrong. But can't you help just this once, just until things stabilize?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "No, Mom. Not anymore." That weekend, Jessica showed up in my driveway, her eyes bloodshot, voice brittle with panic. "Susan, listen, my car payment is 3 weeks late. They're threatening repossession. If I lose the car, I can't get to work. And if I can't work, how will I feed Madison and Connor?" The irony cut deep. Feed her children when she had laughed about mine being fed scraps. "You should have thought about that when you mocked my boys," I said, folding my arms. Her voice cracked. "I didn't mean it like that. I was stressed. I said things I shouldn't have. Please don't punish my kids for my mistakes." For a fleeting second, guilt clawed at me. Then I remembered her words, born to get leftovers. My jaw tightened. "Your kids will be fine. You'll figure it out. But you won't do it on my dime." She slammed her fist against the car hood. "You're heartless, Susan. You'd rather see your own family on the street than help." I stepped closer, my voice low and steady. "I'd rather see my children respected than sacrificed for your comfort. If that makes me heartless, so be it." By the 3rd week, Dad finally cracked. He came to my door, unshaven, shoulders slumped, eyes ringed with exhaustion. For the first time in my life, he didn't look like the man who had once towered over me with authority. He looked small. "Susie," he said softly, using the childhood nickname I hadn't heard in years. "We're drowning. Without your help, we'll have to sell everything. The house, the furniture. We'll have nothing." "You'll have each other," I said. "And maybe that's what you need to learn what matters when the money's gone." His lips trembled, anger flickering beneath the fatigue. "You think this is easy for me? Begging my own daughter?" "No," I said gently. "But it was easy for you to tell my sons they didn't belong. Easier to call them problems than to defend them. That's why I'm done paying for your comfort." For a long moment, we just stared at each other, father and daughter, 2 generations locked in a silent war. Then he turned away, muttering, "You'll regret this when we're gone." But as I watched him shuffle down the driveway, I realized the regret wasn't mine to carry. That night, Marcus pulled me close. "You okay?" I nodded slowly. They're finally feeling what we've carried for years. And maybe that's the only way they'll ever change. The house was quiet except for the boys' gentle breathing down the hall. For the first time, I felt the weight shift off my shoulders. The walls of their entitlement were crumbling. And in the rubble, maybe, just maybe, they would finally learn what family truly means. By the 4th week, the tone of my parents' calls shifted again. No more shouting, no more desperate accusations. Instead, their voices carried something softer, sugary, almost rehearsed. It was the kind of tone they used on church friends, the mask they wore for outsiders. One evening, as I loaded the dishwasher, Mom called. "Susan," she began, her voice trembling just enough to sound sincere, "your father and I have been talking. We want to make things right. What if we start a tradition Sunday dinners, everyone together, equal plates, equal time. No more mistakes." I leaned against the counter, suspicious. "Equal dinners. Yes," she rushed on. "The boys, Madison, Connor, everyone treated the same. We'll cook enough for all. We'll play games together. Just family again." For a moment my heart ached. I imagined Jamie and Tyler running through the backyard with cousins' laughter without shadows, dinner tables without division. But then Mom's next words arrived smooth as butter, hiding the knife inside. "Of course," she added, "while we rebuild trust, maybe you could help with essentials, just the mortgage, just until we're back on our feet." And there it was. The real reason. Not the children, not love, money. I forced my voice calm. "So equality comes with a price tag, a monthly installment to prove my children deserve respect?" No, she insisted quickly. "It's not like that. It's just, we can't lose the house, Susan. And if you helped a little, it would show the boys that family sticks together." I almost laughed at the absurdity. Family sticks together unless the children are biracial, unless the money dries up, unless comfort is threatened. "Let me think about it," I said, finally, my words deliberate. After hanging up, I sat with Marcus on the couch explaining the conversation. He listened silently, then asked, "Do you believe them?" I shook my head. "Not yet. But maybe I can test them, see if they care more about the boys or the money." So the following Sunday, I agreed to dinner. We arrived at 6 sharp. The house already looked different. Boxes stacked in corners, furniture gone signs of their financial unraveling. But the table was set evenly. This time 4 children, 4 plates, same portions. Mom bustled around nervously. Dad forced a smile. Jessica kept her eyes down. "Jamie, Tyler," Mom said brightly, "we saved your favorite meatballs. Everyone gets the same tonight." The boys hesitated, glancing at me. I nodded gently, and they sat. For the first 20 minutes, everything looked normal. Laughter, polite conversation, even Jessica complimenting Jamie's drawing. Then as dessert plates were cleared, Dad cleared his throat. "Susan, about the mortgage." There it was. I put my fork down. "No." He blinked. "No what? No money. If these dinners are about rebuilding trust, then let them be about that. Not about bills, not about loans. Just family." The room went still. Jessica looked up sharply. "But how can they survive without help?" "They'll figure it out," I said. "If you want my children here, show them love without conditions. If not, we're done." Mom's eyes filled with tears, real or staged, I couldn't tell. "We're trying, Susan." "Then prove it," I said softly. "Not with promises, with actions." I gathered the boys, thanked them for dinner, and left before anyone could argue further. In the car, Tyler asked quietly, "Mom, are Grandma and Grandpa different now?" I looked at his small face in the rearview mirror. "They're trying," I said carefully, "but we'll have to wait and see if it's real." Marcus reached over, taking my hand. "You handled that perfectly. No money, no compromises. They'll either change for real or not at all." And as the headlights cut through the dark road home, I realized something important. I wasn't afraid of their games anymore. Because the test had already begun, and this time, the only score that mattered was how they treated my sons. 6 months slipped by each day, stretching the distance between me and the family I grew up with. At first, the silence felt like freedom. No more frantic phone calls, no guilt-laden requests, no late-night transfers draining our accounts. Just me, Marcus, and the boys building a life on respect and love instead of obligation. But little by little, the silence grew heavier. I could see it in Jamie's questions at bedtime. Do Grandma and Grandpa still hate us? I could hear it in Tyler's small voice. Will we ever have a family barbecue again? My answers were always careful, but the truth lingered. Children don't stop wanting grandparents just because those grandparents failed them. One Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang with a number I hadn't saved, but I knew it instantly. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. Hello, hi, Susan. Mom's voice was softer, steadier than I remembered. I don't expect you to believe me, but we've been in counseling. Your father and we're learning things we should have faced a long time ago. I braced myself for the ask, for the inevitable plea for money, but it didn't come. Instead, she said, our therapist has us writing letters, owning what we did. Would you read mine if I sent it? Her words caught me off guard. Letters therapy. This wasn't the script I knew. 2 days later, an envelope arrived. Inside was Mom's handwriting, shaky but deliberate. She admitted to the bias she had brushed off for years. She admitted that fear of what the neighbors thought mattered more to her than protecting her grandsons, and she wrote the words I never thought I'd see. We were wrong. We hurt you. We hurt your boys. We want to change. I read it 3 times, my heart torn between hope and suspicion. That weekend, Dad called Marcus directly, something he had never done before. They met for coffee. When Marcus came home, he looked tired but contemplative. He apologized, Marcus said quietly, not just to smooth things over. He owned it, every word, every slight, every silence. He even asked about Jamie's art and Tyler's soccer team. I stared at him, searching his face. Do you believe him? Marcus hesitated, then nodded slowly. I think he's scared, but I also think he's trying. The following Sunday, we agreed to meet not at their old house, which they had sold months earlier, but at a modest apartment they now rented. When we walked in, the boys clutched my hands tightly, eyes wide. Grandma greeted them with nervous energy, holding out 2 sketch pads and a brand new soccer ball. For you, she said. Not to buy your love, just to show we've been listening. Jamie's eyes lit up as he flipped open the sketch pad, Tyler bouncing the ball eagerly against the wall. Dad crouched down to their level, his voice steady. We want to be better grandparents, if you'll let us. Dinner was simple pasta and salad, but this time every plate was equal. No corners, no crumbs. Conversation flowed awkwardly at first, but then softened. Jaime proudly showed his latest drawing. Tyler recounted his soccer team's win. For the first time in years, my parents listened, not distracted, not dismissive, but truly listening. Driving home that night, Tyler asked Mom, are Grandma and Grandpa different now? I thought carefully before answering. They're trying to be, I said. Jamie, ever the old soul, added, people can change, but only if they keep trying. Marcus reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. So do we give them another chance? I looked at our boys in the back seat, their faces hopeful, and realized the decision wasn't just about me. It was about them, about whether I believed people who had once taught my children they deserved less could now learn to love them as equals. I don't know if I trust them yet, I said finally, but I'm willing to watch, to see if their actions match their words, because if they're truly changing, our boys deserve grandparents who love them without conditions. As the city lights blurred past the windshield, one thing became clear. Forgiveness wasn't a gift I owed. It was a path they would have to earn step by step, meal by meal, moment by moment. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something real. Nearly a year had passed since the night I'd overheard my family condemn my children to a life of crumbs. In that time, so much had shifted. The house I grew up in was gone. Jessica had taken on 2 jobs. My parents were renting a modest apartment, their pride whittled down to something rawer, humbler. And somewhere in the cracks they had started to reach out tentative apologies, counseling sessions, awkward Sunday dinners that didn't end in disaster. But tonight was different. Tonight was the first big gathering, a cousin's birthday held at a rented community hall. balloons bobbing buffet tables groaning with food, relatives trickling in with wrapped gifts. It was the kind of event I used to dread a stage for comparison and quiet prejudice. Now I walked in with Marcus beside me, and our boys gripping our hands, my chest tight but steady. Whispers rippled as we entered old habits die hard. But then something surprising happened. Dad was the first to cross the room, his voice firm but warm. "Jamie Tyler, over here we saved you seats at the front." He crouched down, clapping Jamie's shoulder, ruffling Tyler's hair. The boys froze for a moment, then broke into shy smiles. Mom followed with plates already piled, equally no one waiting their turn, no one relegated to the sidelines. "Eat up, darlings," she said. "There's plenty for everyone." I watched carefully, my instincts coiled like a spring waiting for the slip, the old pattern to resurface. And maybe it did in small ways, Jessica's stiff posture when Marcus joined a conversation, the cousin who muttered about different worlds colliding. But when Tyler dropped his soccer ball and it rolled toward the cake table, Dad was the one who retrieved it, handing it back with a smile. And when Jamie showed off his sketchbook, Mom actually gathered a small circle of relatives to admire it, her pride genuine, not performative. The tension never fully left. My shoulders ached from staying alert, scanning for slights. At one point, Jessica cornered me near the drinks table. Her voice was low, brittle. "So this is what it takes to get you back. Starving us out until we beg." I met her glare evenly. "This isn't about starving anyone. It's about proving whether you can see my children as equals. Tonight is your test as much as mine." Her lips pressed tight, but she said nothing more. For once, silence was better than venom. Later during the birthday song, Tyler tugged my sleeve. Grandpa sang loud, like really loud. He giggled, eyes shining. Jaime added softly, "And Grandma told everyone, I'm going to be an artist one day." Something loosened in my chest, fragile but real. As the evening wound down, Marcus squeezed my hand. "What do you think?" he whispered. I scanned the room, the cousins laughing together, my parents hovering close to the boys without smothering Jessica, watching from a distance, conflicted but quieter than usual. It wasn't perfect. It might never be perfect. But for the first time in years, I saw possibility. I think I said slowly that we're not all the way there. But maybe, just maybe, the door isn't closed anymore. Walking out into the cool night air, the boys skipped ahead, clutching party favors and leftover cake. Their laughter echoed in the parking lot, free and unburdened. And I realized something profound. This wasn't just a test for my parents or Jessica. It was a test for me, too. Could I hold them accountable and still allow space for growth? Could I protect my boys without walling them off from the chance of real family? The answer wasn't clear yet. But tonight, beneath the glow of streetlights and balloons deflating in the distance, I saw the faint flickers of light breaking through the storm. And for now, that was enough. When the storm of anger finally passed, what remained was silence, a silence filled not with defeat, but with choice. I had stripped my parents and sister of the safety net they had mistaken for love. I had watched them stumble, fall, and scramble to rebuild their lives without leaning on mine. And through that process, I had learned one of the hardest lessons: revenge, even when justified, will never heal a child's broken heart. Marcus once told me that true strength isn't in how fiercely you fight back, but in how wisely you decide what to hold on to and what to release. At first, I thought the only path was severing ties forever. After all, how could I forgive people who had told my babies they were born to eat crumbs? How could I trust voices that had once reduced my sons to less than while demanding my money with smiles that felt more like chains? But then came the little moments. My father sitting through Jaime's entire art presentation nodding earnestly. My mother kneeling down to tie Tyler's shoelaces at that first family dinner after months of separation. Jessica standing back at first, slowly learning to keep quiet, rather than poison the air with cruelty. These were not miracles. They were baby steps. Yet sometimes forgiveness doesn't come in grand gestures. It comes in choosing to notice the steps, however small, that move people toward change. The Western proverb rang in my head: blood makes you related, loyalty makes you family. For too long, I had confused blood with loyalty. I had given money because I thought it proved devotion. I had accepted insults because I thought rejecting them meant rejecting my roots. But I finally understood family is not measured by DNA or by guilt-driven sacrifices. It is measured by the willingness to stand with each other in love, equality, and respect. And here's the paradox. By cutting them off, I taught them the lesson they had ignored for years. By saying no, I gave them the chance to confront the ugliness inside themselves. You teach people how to treat you. That proverb became my anthem, my shield, and ultimately my gift to Jamie and Tyler. They would grow up knowing their worth was not negotiable, not even for the sake of family harmony. Yet as the weeks turned into months, another truth softened me. Justice delayed is justice denied. I realized that if I only clung to anger, I would be delaying justice for my own children. Because justice is not only about punishing those who do wrong, it is also about offering a path to restoration. My boys needed to see not only boundaries, but also the possibility of redemption. They needed to know that forgiveness, when chosen freely, is not weakness, but wisdom. So when my parents finally came forward with honesty, no more excuses, no more bargaining, I listened. They admitted their prejudice. They admitted the years of entitlement. They admitted they had failed not just me, but the grandchildren who deserved more. For the first time, their apologies weren't wrapped in demands. And in that moment, I made my own choice. I chose not to forget, because forgetting erases lessons hard won. But I chose to forgive. Not for them, but for Jamie and Tyler, who deserve to inherit a family legacy of growth rather than bitterness. Forgiveness became my form of revenge, not the fiery, destructive kind, but the kind that transforms what was broken into something new. A different kind of victory, the kind that doesn't need winners or losers, only learners. This, dear listeners, is why I believe stories like mine belong in what you might call true revenge stories. Because true revenge is not just watching others lose what they once took for granted. True revenge is rewriting the ending. It's turning betrayal into wisdom, cruelty into resilience, and exclusion into a chance to demand dignity. To every parent, child, or partner who has felt the sting of being treated as less than, I say, this: draw your lines. Protect your worth. Do not let anyone convince you that love requires silence in the face of harm. But when the moment comes, and only you will know when, consider whether forgiveness could be your final, unexpected act of strength. Because nothing unsettles those who underestimated you more than seeing you rise whole and unbroken, still capable of compassion. As I close this chapter of my life, I look at my children and see more than their mixed skin or the labels others tried to press upon them. I see warriors of light growing up in a home where love is not conditional, where fairness is non-negotiable, and where forgiveness is modeled not as surrender, but as power. So I ask you, watching this story unfold from wherever you are in the world, what would you have done? Would you have walked away forever? Or would you like me test the strength of forgiveness after the storm of betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your stories, your voices, are what give these lessons meaning across continents and cultures. And if this story touched you, if you've ever faced a choice between cutting ties and offering grace, hit the like button and subscribe for more journeys like this. Together we can turn pain into wisdom, betrayal into growth, and family into something defined not by blood alone, but by loyalty, love, and respect. Because at the end of the day, that is the truest revenge of all.